Hi, nice to meet you.
Before
Great. Well, thank you for doing that.
Is there anything going on?
I do.
You haven't had any illegal shootings
But anyway, as long as you know about it. Who's Texas?
Okay. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order.
You gotta use your microphone.
Can we just talk really loud?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. The time being, it's like 5:17 p.m. Madam Clerk, could we call the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Clem,
Here.
I'm sorry, I should say Alderperson Clem,
It's okay.
McClenathan,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Busker,
Here.
Brashaw, Keister,
Here.
Chesney.
Here. Thank you. My notes probably didn't do the best job crafting the agenda because I did leave out something saying approval of the agenda, but could we, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay, there's a motion by Alderman Keister and a second by Alderman Clem. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion carries. Item 3, adoption of the public comment rules. For the public comment rules, I refer us to our rules in general found in Chapter 2, 20.10. I would offer to the committee that we would adopt the same rules as for the other council and committee meetings. Any discussion in regards to that?
Chair,
Alderman Keister.
I make a motion we approve as you stated.
Okay.
Chair,
Alderman Chesney?
there was 2 sets. The committee of the whole required that it had to be agenda items, and then non-agenda items were at the end. The transition committee adopted more lenient rules that were agenda and non-agenda items, both the beginning and the end. Do we have a preference?
I would prefer the normal council rules as opposed to the exception that we had for the managerial, which I believe is now dissolved, because under statute, wasn't it, dissolved once the city manager was hired and business concluded, I think is what the ordinance read. Okay. That would be my preference. Thoughts on that?
I'd second that.
Okay.
Another comment if I could.
Alderman Clem?
I don't think we need it, but I just asked, I didn't see the pledge. Do we do it for any meetings other than council? Just ask. No big deal.
We can, future ones.
Okay, no, that's
Honestly,
fine.
didn't even think about it.
No, that's fine. I'm just sitting there. and
Yep.
That's the only reason. Okay, no problem. Not at all.
Okay, so, I think there was a motion, in regards to adopting the rules as by Alderman Keister. And was there a second, Madam Clerk, on that? Alderman Chesney? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Now we're at item 4, public comments. Madam Clerk, were there any public comments signed in? No, it's not.
There are none.
Okay. Being none, we go to item 5. And item 5 is budget priorities. And the reason I wanted to include this for discussion in regards to this is because I know many of us have had an opportunity to speak informally with each other, informally with City Manager Crow, and also I believe with the mayor as well in regards to what are some of the budget priorities. As you know, we are on a truncated schedule in regards to the budget this year because with the change in system going to the change of government going to city manager, it was decided that we largely wait until he was on board for that. And as you know, by looking in the Finance Committee ordinances and speaking in regards to the in the budgets, and Manager Crow has also indicated this on multiple occasions that kind of the way he envisions the budget process is initially the council will give him kind of a set of budget priorities, then he goes and crafts it with the staff and finance, in particular also Finance Director Bernadelle, and then brings it back to us for fleshing it out further. But while we've largely done it informally, I thought it would be important for us to formally discuss and put in place a set of budget priorities for it. I would note largely in the feedback and the discussion that I've received from many of you, because we, as I said, we've informally talked about this, many of us. There were a few common themes, and I suppose I put them out there, and then let the discussion go from there. One of the things that had been brought up repeatedly through, I'd say the vast majority of the colleagues, was in regards to public safety and how I'm addressing public safety as a priority. Also, in regards to that, there are very many variations of this, but also people talking about our housing, our city image, cleaning up of the city, things of that nature. Those are some of it was kind of under that broad umbrella. Like I said, there's varieties as to what that looks like. Then there was also talk in regards to infrastructure as well going forward. And I know through some of you talked about when prioritizing those also taking advantage of various funding sources and things of that nature going forward. So in that broad umbrella of talking of budget priorities, I wanted to open up the floor. Are there other areas that we would like to give? First of all, is that an accurate recitation of the majority of the budget priorities that were presented? Are there other things that you'd like us to, as a council, to formally refer to the city manager to kind of keep in mind as we're for budget priorities? Not necessarily a checklist at this time of this project, this project, this project, but for budget priorities as we go and enter into this budget process. So I'd open the floor at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Alderman Keister.
One of the things, I don't know if it's in there or not, when we started with this building here, I had all along requested a budget item to be put in to continued maintenance and stuff on this building. I don't know if it's in this budget or not, but I think this would be a good time to start that so we could continue to have the funding to maintain this building and do whatever repairs is necessary. I realize it's fairly new, but I think now's the time to start considering that item in there. And if I may follow up with one more item.
Alderman Keister.
I guess one of my main priorities in the budget is to try, at the very least, if at all possible, to keep the manpower in all the departments of the city at the level it is right now, if at all possible, because there isn't a department in the city, and I've said this before, that has the manpower they really should have. And I would hate to see any of them be brought down below where they are now and decrease their effectiveness.
Thank you, Alderman Keister. Other comments under the broad umbrella of budget priorities that we'd like the manager to be taking consideration of when crafting the budget for our consideration?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Buster.
Yeah, along the lines of cleaning up the city, I'd like him to look at the cost effectiveness of a bulky waste pickup for the entire city. How we could manage that.
I would just echo what Patrick said there, because we started that discussion last year of, you know, what was sticks and what was trees and what was everything else, how we needed to sort it out, but it is a real big priority. One of the questions I've got, Peter, is how with the restructuring of water and sewer and that, how is that gonna slip into the budget? How is that gonna be done? Do you have a clue yet at this time?
In regards,
Just a question, you know.
yeah. Expound on that a little bit.
I guess, knowing in the past that we have some fair amount of issues with water and sewer and shut-offs and things that have happened over the years that have not really been followed up legally and that kind of stuff. I just wondered how, as we take this over and take over the water and sewer department, so how does that all fit in? Just a general question is all, not looking for anything in specific, you know.
Budget-wise or operation?
Question-wise, you know.
Actually,
No, here's kind of.
council.
Maybe I could help
Sure, go ahead.
shed some light on this issue. Typically, water and sewer utilities for municipalities are dealt with as enterprise funds. And, you know, again, I'm not entirely completely familiar with the history here in the city of Freeport, but by shifting those dollars from the Board of Water and Sewer Commission, they then become where they should be overall, which is a separate fund of the city of Freeport, separate and apart from your general fund, which then continues to operate as it normally would, which means expenses related to water and sewer and the utilities itself have to come from those funds only, or sometimes you can supplement that with your general fund if you need to, but you couldn't spend water and sewer money, for example, on police officers, because under Illinois law, it's an enterprise fund, so those dollars can only be spent on that function. So the elimination of a Board of Water and Sewer Commission would not change that whatsoever. It would still remain a separate fund. But from a budgetary perspective, there would need to be obviously a budget prepared for that, that utility, just like you would for your general fund, where you would set your priorities on what you wanted any available funds to be spent on, just like you normally would for your general fund.
Sure. Alderman Smith.
Thanks, Tom. I think what you'll have is more coordination between streets and water and sewer now, to where perhaps under the enterprise fund, now you'll see a greater concentration on coordinating both the efforts of the undergrounds and the street utility, or the street work. Not to say that it's been poorly run in the past, but I think that it might align it to where you'll get more bang for the buck, if you will.
Appreciate the explanation, understand it more, and that is more of an upcoming thing than, hey, it's right here, but I just wanted to have it, that's one of the things we're gonna have to think about along the way. Do we, at this point, I mean, I've heard figures thrown out here and there, are we just discussing tonight generalities of what we agree on the way the budget should be?
Right, and I'm certainly trying, and I don't want to get into too much nuts and bolts, you know, say this figure for that, because I'd like to, I think probably the proper role for us at this point is just what are some of the broader budget priorities we want them to be looking at, and then they kind of show us what some of the options are on that.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Brescia.
Thank you. As you and I spoke, one of my number one priorities is utilizing revenue sources that we spoke about before, whether it's grant writing, which is a really big deal. Some people think it's we're just asking for money. Well, we are, but this money is going to be allotted to other cities if we don't request it. And this is no slight against any of our directors. They all do a good job. I know both of our chiefs have applied for many grants. Director Mills has, Engineer Gallagher, Nancy McDonald is a wonderful grant writing. But a lot of cities have multiple team members that work with the grant writings other than just the department heads who tend to be overworked and overloaded at times. I think that's one of the things that we're underutilizing. There are other communities that have a second grant writer that works for the city, that those grants help cover the cost, just like when Shelley Griswold worked here, and Leslie Mastriani was a wonderful grant writer as well. And they get advertised, they say, hey, the grants we have coming in pay for one full director's salary plus half the grant writer's salary. So that's one of the things I really think we should focus on, even if it means having to hire out, or as Peter and I talked about outsourcing, talked with the city manager about this as well. I think the council should be commended also, since we did increase like water deposits and a few things. We're using OPM, we're using other people's money to help cover costs. Again, we don't own those deposits. The people get them back unless they don't pay their water bill, unless they have a problem that they need to cover those bills. So I think that also will help the city. I also think public safety is very important. The housing stock, cleaning up the housing stock. I know I'm preaching to the choir when we always talk about our housing stock is complacent at best in certain neighborhoods, lacking in a lot of them. And I think to increase some of those fines, not fees. I'm not talking about fee structure across the board, punishing everyone. I'm talking about fines. People that don't comply should be helping pay for some of that. And I know we've already started with that, increasing some of the fine structure, and yet you have to draw that, I say fine line. You have to be careful because there again, if you go into a lot of litigation, trying to collect those fines gets very expensive too for the city. So I know we have to kind of cover that. And like I said, I'm not trying to make any of our department heads look bad or anything when we talk about looking at ascension also for every department, making sure we have someone in line that's being trained for that position. We always need to keep our eyes and ears open to make sure that there are certain departments where we know that somebody may or may not be leaving, that we have to start cross-training so we're not always hiring without, and we keep some of our talent within and give everybody the hopeful feeling that they perhaps could be promoted to those positions. It helps a lot with morale with our departments. It helps a lot with the people that work for the city of Freeport, knowing that if they work hard and they do their best and they take that extra schooling, that they could be promoted within that position. I think that actually would help cut costs as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Smith.
At the risk of sounding too partisan on the issue, I think that there needs to be a greater emphasis in priority toward public safety. You can scarcely have a conversation with anyone in the city, and maybe it's because I'm so closely aligned with law enforcement, but I've scarcely had a conversation with anybody about the affairs of the city where the issue of crime didn't come up. And I know that we're in the midst of crafting a new public safety plan, and that's certainly going to take into account some additional resources, I would guess. And so my first priority would be dealing with the crime issue and shifting some further resources toward public safety. Certainly housing is an issue in the city and has been for some time, and I think that we've implemented some programs to try to address that, and I think that there could be some further enhancement with regard to those, but as far as I'm concerned, number one is public safety.
Alderman Chisholm.
Sure, yeah, and I would echo Alderman Smith's comments on public safety. When the mayor rolled out her public safety plan, she identified that she wanted to increase manpower by 4 persons this budget year. That's aggressive, but I think it's certainly a goal that we need to try to achieve. We need to align our priorities, in my view, around public safety and blight reduction. So as Alderman Smith said, Alderman Busker, and pretty much I think all of the council as well as the mayor, I think we're on the same page with blight reduction, and that will address the overall public safety issues. Infrastructure, we're averaging, or for demolitions, we're averaging right around 30 demolitions a year. I spoke with Director Mills if the budget allows, we could get to 80 in 1 year, which is very aggressive. I don't think that there is a dollar too high when it comes to demolitions. I think that it is a good priority for the city to have. And then the infrastructure, I don't know that we'll be able to get all there in this budget year. However, I think with the enterprise fund and the additional revenues that are going to be drawn off the water and sewer, perhaps there are strategies that will start to address both the utilities as well as the streets. My only request is you do this without raising taxes. So I'm sure you'll be able to thread the needle on that. So I would certainly be very hesitant to support any additional revenues. Thank you.
Any further comments in regards to the budget priorities? Okay, to kind of give, I guess, kind of crystallize it a little bit too, again, as I said at the beginning, and some of you more forcefully than others highlighted public safety. If we were to go to the city manager and indicate that when you're crafting the budgets, the number one priority is public safety, is it too strong to say that that's the number one focus we want you to look on? Is there any disagreement with that? Is that too strong? Or is that generally the message we want to convey?
Chair,
Alderman Chesney?
through the lens of law enforcement.
Okay,
Public safety can mean a lot of things,
sure.
but increased law enforcement.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister?
I agree with increasing public safety. I think it's a good idea and I think it's necessary. The only thing I caution is I don't want to see it done at the sacrifice of the other obligations and things that need to be done in different departments. So basically, I don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, cut down this department so we can bring this department back up. If we can do it with keeping the services as they are and increasing the police department, then I'm behind it 100%.
All right, anything further on that? I think we've got a good, I guess get a good general structure to talk about with them on. Budget timeline item. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, budget timeline. As you know, obviously this is the first meeting of June. I spoke with Manager Crow in regards to when could we maybe see when could we expect the first draft, and we have Director Bernadelle here as well. Director, when I talked to Manager Crow, he had indicated and he thought, where it says we're at the first meeting here 2 weeks from today, we'd be able to have a draft for distribution and discussion. Is that putting too much of a cramp, or does that mean, anyway, I'm not asking you to, second guess that, but is that generally in line with what your discussion's been with Manager Crow?
I'm going to speak not for Manager Crow, but I will speak what I think. I already have the budget in a form that is ready to go as soon as Manager Crow goes along with it and review it, so I think it should not be a problem whatsoever.
All right. And on the end for the timeline, Manager Crow is talking about the third Monday in July. It's going to be an end date for it because we obviously have to have it for public hearing and things of that nature. So that gives us a pretty quick schedule here. Any comments in regards to that timeline that we're going to be looking to deal with? Any adjustments to that? Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister?
Just want to point out that with the meetings we're having in the evenings and stuff, that might not be enough time to review the budgets properly and do what we need to do. So we may have to consider, as we have in the past, have a Saturday or Sunday session where we can go over it in more detail.
Alderman Clem?
I think if we need to have a special meeting along the line, we could do it without a doubt. I think the one thing that is a great big plus in our favor this year is we've got Gary has been here some time, Director Bernadelle has been here some time, and has a good handle on what we have. And with the City Manager Crow coming on, I think it'll be fairly aggressive once everything gets together and we get to figure things out. The major thing I think will be the numbers, how far off it is and how much you can trim. But I think the timeline is very realistic, and if we need to have a special meeting, we've done it before in the past, it's not a problem whatsoever.
Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. I agree with Alderman Clem on the fact that with Mr. Bernadelle here, and he has highlighted a lot of things that made them easier for us to read, and with him and Director Crow going over this, hopefully they can give us more notes so we can study at home. Each one of us can do our due diligence to go over the budget and write out our questions so that we're not just taking a great amount of time in meetings. I think we could have less meetings if everybody paid attention and did their homework ahead of time. Thank you.
Anything further on the timeline that we're dealing with budget? Hearing nothing, agenda 7, scheduled meetings. Once we see that that first draft, obviously we don't want to have meetings for the sake of having meetings. So scheduled meetings, I would anticipate we would shoot for that third meeting in June, unless we get the draft earlier and then we want to have a different one at another time. But I think realistically we'd be looking at that third Monday in June for next meeting for finance. In regards to timing, when we have that first draft tonight, obviously you don't need as much time because we were talking about general priorities and timeline. But once we're going to be digging into certain nuts and bolts of it, it might take us more time. Is there a council preference in regards to days of meeting? I know obviously we're 45 minutes earlier here. The whole idea is to just have that period of time where we're just talking about budget and finance going forward. Do you prefer Mondays before a council meeting if feasible for time purposes? I'm seeing a few heads nod.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
In many ways, I would prefer that. However, my concern is just having 45 minutes to an hour. Are we going to have enough time to do the discussions we need? And perhaps maybe we might want to consider having another evening where we can have the time to do it.
We're going to have to adjust as we get into that. Yeah, obviously, it's with the truncated schedule. We're going to have to move fast, and if we need more time, we can do so. Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you, Chair. There again, if we get Mr. Bernadelle and Manager Crow online as far as getting us the schedule of what they have planned with the budget already, even if it's not a final draft, so we can start asking our questions in 2 weeks' time. Is that really pushing it to have something before us?
Well, Chair,
Director?
I don't know what Manager Cohen will be, but as far as I'm concerned, so whatever you ask me, I'll be ready for him. I already have a bare bone of the budget, and so he just have to go over it and review it with me and ask me to do this and that, and then we should be ready to go. And the format's going to be very different. It's going to be the format we have 2 years ago, easy to follow, easy to read, with comments on the side, so it should not be any confusion whatsoever.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. The reason I asked Mr. Bernadelle is because if we're scheduling our next meeting, we don't know if they'll be even ready with a template of a budget. We just don't want to rush them too.
Manager Crow said 2 weeks from today would be okay.
Okay, thank you.
I said I didn't want to put you on the spotlight too much on that, but he indicated, for purposes of getting it started, it would be aggressive, but we could do that. Yeah.
Chair.
Yes, Alderman.
Well, one thing the council has to keep in mind, the last couple budget cycles have been long and slightly painful. I remember we were going until the 11 and almost midnight on our first budget cycle. Part of the reason that we created this committee of the whole for finance was to start to funnel our questions and inquiries to Peter. Perhaps it could be done individually and offline to speed things up. I think that Alderman Clanthan's role is really twofold. One is to coordinate with the council and the mayor's office as well as the city managers. So I would just encourage the council, now that we've got the framework of the priorities, which what I heard, perhaps we all heard, was infrastructure, demolitions, and public safety seem to be some of the areas of focus. If there's no objection to those, I think that the inquiries could be made directly to the chair and perhaps the vice chair, and then that can be crafted with the city manager. But I don't know that we have to get into the long-winded discussions that we've done in the past, because I think that we're on the same page for the priorities, unless I'm seeing it different, somebody else is seeing it different.
Mr. Chair?
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Chesney. If I look at this correctly, that would be June 19th. Mr. Chair, are you still looking at 5:15 as a time frame?
For a first draft, I'd like to do 5, if that doesn't cramp you guys too much. 5 o'clock on June 19th acceptable for the majority of folks. One other thing I wanted to ask is, I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, this was the first meeting, but we're going to have certain meetings where we're probably going to be talking about certain departments and things of that nature. But if we know that we have a department that is not, going to be addressed, I don't want to have heads here unless they feel, like it's going to be affecting their departments. I may be wrong on that. Is there a preference as regards to whether we need all department heads here, for every finance meeting, or just based on the subject matter?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Clem.
I believe the way we did it in the past left somewhat to be desired, and I think a new openness to this might be helpful. I don't believe that if we're not discussing somebody's budget that they need to spend a whole bunch of extra time here unless they want to be part of it and want to come to it. If we need somebody there, I think, hey, invite them in. I don't think we need a dog and pony show like we've had in the past, so to speak. We all at this period of time we have a pretty good idea what everybody does, and if we've got questions on it and stuff, we can go into it in some more detail, I think. Does that make sense?
Other thoughts?
As long as Chief Barclow's here, so I feel safe.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
I don't believe that we had to have all of them here either. However, I would possibly make a recommendation that we have the one we're discussing that evening, and perhaps one other in case we do get through it faster. We have another department head here so we can continue to move forward.
Alderman.
On a serious note, no, I agree with Tom. I think that we need to be very cognizant of the time that the department heads already put in. So unnecessary meetings, in my view, we can put that to rest. So if we don't have a reason for department head to speak on an issue, I don't see any reason why he or she would have to be here, and that would include the police chief actually. So I would say that their time is much better spent somewhere else than sitting here. So that's just my thought.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Smith.
The one thing we haven't had in the past, of course, is the city manager, and we can all assume when we come to this conversation, he will have had conversations with his department heads, and he will have vetted these budgets, and from my observations, he's perfectly capable of articulating his positions and making his arguments, so there's that to consider too.
Good point. Good point.
Mr. Chair?
Alderperson Bradshaw.
I know that not everyone is comfortable going over the budget one-on-one, and I would like to suggest, without asking anybody specific if they want to buddy up, without breaking quorum rules, every alderperson can meet with one other alderperson and or the mayor at any time to go over budget situations. So if you're not sure about something, call another alderman and meet with them, have coffee or a Coke or something, and start going over this, because this is going to take some work, and most of it will probably be done by Mr. Bernadelle and our city manager, Crow, but we need to look into this and delve into it and feel comfortable with it, so we're not having a lot extra meetings. That's hard for all of us. Thank you.
All right, anything further? Other than noting that we'll have next meeting at 5 o'clock on the third Monday, which you said was June 19th. Okay.
One other thing, Peter, if I could, because I think we all hit on it tonight as being a matter of importance, but we all came out at it at a little different angle. When we talk about the blight reduction, and we talk about housing, and we talk about all this, all of it we've put a lot of emphasis on in the past, and we need to consider, but all of us I know have talked to each other individually about, and Sally mentioned it tonight, we need to take a look at some of the housing and some of the things for not meeting not meeting ordinances, lawn mowing, just general condition of stuff. You know, and I know if that takes, that would affect without a doubt Alex's department more than anybody, but I think as we move forward, we need to make sure that we kind of have that in the back of our minds so we can come in and start taking a look at more and more of some of the houses that are in distress. And if we can, it maybe not be a matter of finding them, it may be a matter of helping them in some way. I know Art has got one in his neighborhood now that we've went back and forth on for how long and kidded about it. And by God, I drove by it the other night and the guy's got a dumpster in there and he's got a grayling truck in there starting to clean stuff out. So sometimes it may be just a matter of some discussion and other stuff. But I think we all believe that that is a problem that we need to address.
Any final comment on scheduled meetings? Hearing none. Any public comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Busker, seconded by Chesney. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned at 5:52 p.m.
Sir, good job. Yeah, God bless you. Oh, okay, I'll have to go back. Okay. I have to get first. Oh, no, mine's Friday. Did that surprise you when I said that? Andrew said to me, Andrew called us the other night, usually what they call when they're out drinking someplace. Flip that other one, and I said, I'm going to flip this thing for you just for the hell of it. It was funny. I mean, he used to live down the line. We've been accused of it, but we got that in the family. Each night, everything look at something. Yeah, and it was funny how he was on it. And when they came out with Apple computers,
It was really touching. It was touching. And think about that
See how many kids were involved in it. They come in an hour and go away.
I look at you, just, you were becoming, oh, you're not counting yeah, thank you.
Yeah, what's the, he retired many years ago.
Is that okay? All right, okay, good. It wasn't the reservation.
Meeting's at 6 o'clock. Let's take our seats. Pastor Dixie, would you mind giving the invocation?
tonight. When we're watching TV, don't we just want to hear some truth? I was thinking of that all day today. I just want to hear truth, Lord. So I'm going to pray about truth tonight. So Deuteronomy 32:3. For I proclaim the name of the Lord. I ascribe greatness to our God. He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are justice. O God of truth, and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. So Father God, we make a declaration tonight that you are the one that rules over this city council, and you rule with truth and justice and righteousness. We release you, Holy Spirit, the spirit of truth in our government, because you are seated as sovereign over this city council. Your truth prevails, and no lie can stand. We lift up Mayor Jody Miller. We lift up City Manager Lowell Crow. We lift up every member of this council, and we declare and decree they are going to live in truth. They're going to want to speak truth. This is going to be their main goal, is truth on every hand. Father, we declare that over this meeting tonight. We decree that truth is prevailing in our government. In the name of Jesus Christ, we all agree. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We will officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderman Clem,
Here.
and McLanathan,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Busker,
Here.
Bradshaw,
Here.
Keister,
Here.
Chesney.
Here. Alderman Clem, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda, seeing that we have a few from the fireworks committee, I'd like to move number 18 up to be between 5 and 6 if there's no objections. Seeing no objections, is there an approval for the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Smith. All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And number 2, we have the approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting on May 15th, 2017, and the special meeting on May 22nd, 2017. With an exception, Alderperson Bradshaw brought to the attention there was a typo in the Housing Authority, that there were some names transposed. So is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by Alderman Bradshaw, seconded by Alderman Keister. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. On to number 3, public comments. Are there any public comments? Thank you. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any of the council members would like to have removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none, we have the consent agenda of A, the approval of to receive and place on file the building permit report of activity for April 2017, the building permit report of activity for May 2017, the police department report of activity for April 2017. B, the approval of water and sewer bills payable $424,288.85. The approval of payroll for pay period ending May 13th, 2017, for the total of $537,459.84. The approval of payroll for a pay period ending May 27, 2017, totaling $474,442.31, and the approval of the finance bills payable totaling $566,223.71. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Keister. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Okay, next.
Pardon me, passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next are appointments. We'll do these individually unless it's the consent of the council to lump them all together.
Mayor,
Pardon me?
what, if I could, I'd just suggest, why don't we lump them all together, unless anybody's got any objection?
Okay, let's do that. Madam Clerk, could you please read all of those into the record?
Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints Jeff Davis to the Liquor Commission to replace Jeff Cutler, effective through May 31st, 2021. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints Peter McLanathan as the alderperson to fill the remainder of the term previously held by Andrew Chesney for the Stevenson County Convention and Visitors Bureau through December 31st, 2019. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints Sarah Thompson to the Board of Zoning Appeals to replace Troy Collier and fill the remainder of his term through June 30th, 2020. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints George Buss to the Board of Zoning Appeals to replace Bridget Sheriff and fill the remainder of her term through June 30th, 2021. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints Jeffrey Cutler to the Board of Zoning Appeals to fill a vacant position through June 30th, 2022. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller reappoints Wayne Schofield to the Building Commission through April 30th, 2021. Effective immediately, Mayor Jody Miller appoints Andrea Winter to replace Mark Winter on the Planning Commission to fill the remainder of his term through October 31st, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker for the approval of the appointments. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
So I would just like to say thank you to all those that have previously served in these capacities. We appreciate all that you do for the city and would like to congratulate all of those appointees. We will move on to item number 18, being the discussion on the fireworks. Madam Clerk, would you please read this for the record? Number 18.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Do you mean number 17, discussion on contract for fireworks?
Oh, mine says 18.
Those two.
Which one are we crossing off? She has 18 also. So which one is not on there so we can put our record straight? You have it? Thank you.
It looks like number 18 is the discussion on fireworks from the agenda.
Great. So we're leaving at 18, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay, item 18, moved forward, is discussion on contract for fireworks from Melrose Pyrotechnics, Inc. for July 2nd, 2017, 4th of July fireworks for the city of Freeport at Stevenson County Fairgrounds. At the May 22nd, 2017 special meeting of the City Council, Alderperson Chesney moved and Alderperson Ross seconded that it be moved to the June 5th, 2017 City Council meeting for discussion.
Well, just for the sake of wanting to keep the meeting rolling as quickly as possible and not having an hour-long discussion on fireworks, just kind of wanted to recap it a little bit. And to clear up some of the misconception that was out there, this administration, this council, is not opposed to fireworks. What we're doing is trying to make sense of the budget and what's priority. And it was the recommendation of our city manager not to have the city pay for these. So I always think that we need to come to a good compromise. So what we're doing is, obviously we have to scale back, because if you were able to listen in on any of the finance meeting earlier, our priorities are on public safety, blight reduction, and on infrastructure. So we want to stay focused in that, and fireworks is not in that category. So to spend an additional $20,000 just doesn't seem to make sense. And it wasn't budgeted. Frankly, it just hasn't been budgeted for the last 2 years. And Alderman Keister made a commitment for 2 years in a row to raise these funds, and because of circumstances, hasn't been able to quite meet that. So we want two things. I don't want to cross this path every year. So I want to make a commitment to you that within the next 90 days, I want to come to a resolution that to find a non-for-profit that can pick this up, and we won't have to discuss this every year, and have some input that way, but not be committed out of our budget on it. And so what are we going to do now is Alderman Keister and I have talked several times and believe that we have come to a compromise, a proposal, which I think is a reasonable compromise, and if the council agrees, then we'll go in that direction. But we have an agreement from Melrose to reduce the contract from $20,000 to $15,000. And Alderman Keister believes that the Fireworks Committee can raise $7,500. So therefore, if we split that, the city would be responsible for $7,500, and the fundraising committee can be responsible for $7,500. And if they exceed that, then the city will pay less. So the most that the city will take for a hit on this is $7,500, which I believe is a reasonable compromise. So Alderman Keister, would you like to add to that?
Excuse me, yes I would. First of all, Mayor, I believe last year for the fireworks was in the budget. I think there was $10,000 in there with a $15,000 or $5,000 contingency for last year's budget, because we did have to use a small portion of that to offset what we did not raise. And yes, I have talked to Melrose, and they will go back to $15,000. It will shorten the display just a little bit, but it will still be pretty spectacular. If with the council's permission, I'd like to ask Dan to come to the microphone in case there's any questions, because he may have some information that I do not have. But presently, at the moment, again, correct me, Dan, we got about $1,800 raised now. At this point, we have a way to pay on our website, which is City of Freeport, our FreeportSkyConcert.com. You can pay there with credit card. We have a GoFundMe page on Facebook at this time that is being quite successful. Michelle at Logan's is having a fundraiser on the 12th for us, which we think is going to be quite profitable for us. And if I may, Michelle, could you call me tomorrow? I have a question for you on that too. And on the 17th, we're having a pancake breakfast at Applebee's. Tickets are $5. You can get them from one of the Sky Concert members. I was going to bring some tonight. Hopefully all the council members will purchase at least 1 or 2 tickets to come and have pancakes that morning. But I came straight from the hospital here, so I forgot to pick them up. So please contact me and I will get them to you as quickly as possible. Now, to go on with this, I think this is important to the city to keep this moving on. There was a lot of things that prevented us from raising money at this point that just put us in this position. Now, most of you, if you remember correctly, most of the fundraising we did last year came in with the last month and a half, 2 months prior to the fireworks is where we got most of our money. So I am very confident that raising the $7,500 to pay our portion is not going to be an issue, and that it will be there. But I think this is important to the community that we move forward with this. And if I may, Dan, if you have anything you want to add to that?
Actually, Alderman Keister, by the rules, by Attorney Sosnowski, she said that in order for that to happen, you have to have a leave of counsel, you have to ask for permission.
Okay, with leave of counsel then, if Dad wants to add any comments, is that all right?
Sure. We're good, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
approved.
So I think, Mike, you've covered the main pieces of this. For this year in particular, we're looking at starting fireworks earlier and having some other events. So there will be some kids' activities as well. Bouncy house, bungee run, having various food vendors available as well. So the committee has been very much looking forward to this as well, of having the council's support in order to really lock in these items as necessary to move forward with the fireworks this year. So really the support is very much appreciated, and I am hopeful with the members we have on the team this year to be able to hit these targets and even exceed these targets. And really, it's about making relationships in the community. Guys, this is something that I think we need to continue to have as a very positive thing in our community, and let's keep it that way.
And if I may add one more thing, Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
Yeah, after talking, at the request of the council, I called Melroy's after the last meeting, and they said that we could go until tomorrow as a cutoff date, but a decision has to be made, and then if we're going to do it, it has to be locked in tomorrow, or they will not be able to get everything in motion to be able to make it happen. So I guess I'm asking that we be allowed to do this. Obviously, since I'm involved in it, whatever the vote is, I will be abstaining since I have personal interest in it. But I'm open to any questions or comments that you have.
Alderman Chesney. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say, hey, thank you guys for all the work that you've done on this, and understand that some of the problems that have happened on the way through this, and I believe it is important to the city of Freeport, especially since it's my birthday that you're celebrating. So I have to vote for this, but no, I would agree that Alderman Miller and, Mayor Miller and Alderman Keister came up with a good proposition here that I think will work for everybody, and I'd make a motion to move it forward if I could.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Clarification, move it forward with $15,000 with the commitment from the city of $7,500.
Correct.
I'd second that.
If I may quick, Mayor, you'll notice the contract in front of you does have $20,000 on it. When I contact Melrose tomorrow, I will have them immediately send me a revised contract with the $15,000, and then I would have to bring it down here for the mayor to sign at that time. But I will, as soon as I call them, I'll see to it that I've got a revised copy, and it will not be for the $20,000.
Okay, so Attorney Sadowski wanted to add on that the contract is subject to the approval of either an attorney or our city manager, just to make sure that the contract is tight and we won't have any issues with it. So before it's signed, their approval.
Okay, Mayor, I understand that. I don't know when City Manager Crowe is going to be back, but
This evening.
This evening? Oh, okay, so he will have a chance to look at it tomorrow. Okay, because I can't stress it. I think if I give them verbal confirmation tomorrow, they'll be able to go with it, but they're going to need to get the contract as soon as possible.
Any further discussion?
Mayor?
Dan, was that you?
No, it was me.
This is another strange sound here. Alderman Smith.
Just for purposes of clarity, though, the city's maximum cost would be $7,500 and would be less if the committee were successful in raising more than $7,500.
Correct. Alderman Chesney.
This is probably more of a comment and just an observation. This is our third round of fireworks. Bob, you haven't had a chance to endure our fireworks conversation yearly, and every year it's a mess. And we spend a lot of time on fireworks that don't line with public safety, blight reduction, or infrastructure projects. I really feel we have to transfer the responsibility. And I'd like to commend the great work done. I know that you guys jumped in many cases in the last minute to try to raise up the funds, but I really think we have to get out of the discussion of fireworks and realign our priorities with things that are more pressing. And in my view, I think that it's public safety. So those are just my comments. I really hope that we can put aside a few dollars if we need to within the budget to fund fireworks, if that's what's decided and agreed to by the council and the mayor. But I hope moving forward that this discussion is really happening offline and not spent at the city council.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Yeah, excuse me, if I may comment on that. Our intent was to, by this point, be a separate organization unto ourselves and be a licensed not-for-profit organization so we could handle this without the city. Due to the difficulty this year, that did not happen. But what we'd like to do is have the opportunity to be able to get organized, get our not-for-profit license, become a separate entity away from the city and continue to move forward with this. Because I know myself, Dan, Danielle, Dan's wife, and a few other people are very dedicated to this, and we have already discussed a number of plans. Due to this year's difficulty, we have scaled them back dramatically so we don't get ourselves overextended. But we would like to be able to continue with this. So with the approval of the council, we would like to move forward in that direction. But I think that's a discussion for later time.
Is there any other member of the committee that would like to speak? In the council? Seeing none, we have.
I did have one comment, just so that everyone's clear as well. So the fireworks themselves, obviously the greatest expense for the evening. There are some other expenses as well of having the DJ there and having 3 different bands performing and so forth. So the total cost of those entities may be roughly in the $2,000 range. So we're talking here about the committee to raise $9,500 and just understanding that that's what the committee is wanting to commit to. So that's a very steep goal, but this is how we're presenting this to the community as well. That we're saying that the council is committing to $7,500. The public will come up with the other $9,500, right? And what we're talking about here is that looking at this as an opportunity. And as I understand, Mike, in previous years, Melrose has given us 30 days to pay after the event.
That is correct.
So that may also come into play. If we do not have all the funds at the time of the show, we may continue to collect those funds over the next 30 days and really make that a priority. We don't want our city to be in debt over having a celebration on our nation's independence.
Agreed. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion on the floor for the approval of the contract at $15,000 with the city needing a commitment of $7,500 and the remainder with the finance or with the fireworks committee, all contingent upon the approval and signing off by either the city manager or the attorney. That motion was made by Alderman Clem, seconded by Alderman Chesney. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Abstain.
Chesney.
Aye.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to number 6, which is the second reading of ordinance 2017-39. Madam Clerk, would you please read that into the record?
I'm sorry, did you say 2017-39?
I'm sorry, 39.
Okay. Ordinance amending section 1062.7 entitled Designated Burial Aisles of Chapter 1062, City Cemetery of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois. The first reading was held on May 15, 2017. A motion to adopt was given by Alderperson Busker, seconded by Alderperson Ross, and the ordinance was automatically laid over to tonight's meeting.
Director Dole, would you like to add to this?
Thank you. This is the second reading of this. This just allows for no more than 2 cremations in any one burial lot, and there are fees for that already established. So if there's any other questions other than that, that's pretty straightforward.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of the second reading for the ordinance of 2017-39?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanahan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw. Aye. Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
Item number 7 is the second reading of ordinance 2017-41. Madam Clerk, could you please read that into the record?
An ordinance amending section 1442.11 of the codified ordinances of the city of Freeport, Illinois regarding building permit fee exemptions. The first reading was held on May 22nd, 2017 at a special meeting of the City Council. A motion to adopt was given by Alderperson Chesney, seconded by Alderperson Brashaw, and the ordinance was automatically laid over to tonight's meeting.
Alderman Chesney, is there anything further you'd like to add to this ordinance?
Yes, just briefly, Mayor. There's still a little bit of confusion when we look at best practices and comparables for permits. Without being too long-winded and confusing everybody, I did reach out to Carbondale and did confirm that while they do permit for the same things that we do, they don't permit at all for replacing windows, tearing off and replacing a roof, or doing things such as siding. So if you look at the examples and the comparables compared to Danville, Galesburg, Pekin, I did reach out to Carbondale. I suspect the others are the same. I think what it does tell is a story that our permitting fee structure is very high. But as far as public safety is concerned and the safety on the houses that we're looking at, this doesn't particularly change anything. It's just a function if we want to take the revenue or not. Right now it's projected that the revenue is $2,800 a year. This will offer some relief to homeowners who want to do minor repairs. I think the concern is does this open up other items that perhaps aren't permitted? This ordinance doesn't do that. This ordinance just simply does not collect the money. And like I said, in Carbondale's example, they do not permit for the things that we already permit for. So I think a greater conversation should probably be sent to the building commission to understand why we even permit if somebody wants to replace all their windows or if somebody wants to tear off a roof. Because I think best practices don't show that that's very common. I do recall in 2015 when we originally discussed this with Mayor Gitz, and the reason that we had a threshold was largely for revenue. And because I think the initial thought of the council is just to get rid of it entirely, and then we didn't know the impact that was going to be on the budget. So I think it's a calculated move in the right direction without fully addressing some of the unknowns that I think are going to have to be addressed down the road. I would say that the telling item that jumps out at me when we look at the community comparables is that we have the highest permitting fees of all four. And Freeport for a $40,000 job is $400, and Carbondale is $80. So I think if there's something that needs to be looked at with the building commission as far as restructuring, working with the finance director, that probably needs to be done at some point. But for the purposes of our discussion, if there's any questions, I would open it up. If not, I don't have anything else to say.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
I promised Lowell I'd talk to you civilly about this. I'm just kidding. I have some disagreements with you on this. The first remark I'd make it kiddingly with you. If I wanted to move to Carbondale for those reasons, that'd be fine. All that is a comparison. I've been on the building commission for a number of years, and I've been in the construction trade since 1967. Having been in the mechanical trade since 1984, I look at this just a little differently. I spent quite a bit of time this last weekend driving around our community, 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, some of the 7th Ward and 6th Ward, just driving around looking at properties saying, okay, what difference does this really make? We're looking at it, the objective is here that Andrew brings up is that it would have a lot of homeowners, it would have more homeowners that would do work on their property. I have to tell you this, in the tour I took around Freeport, I couldn't see where there would be very many jobs where the 10,000 versus 6,000 would make that much difference. And neither do I believe that the $2,800 makes a difference in the big operation, or whether we collect that or whether we don't collect that. Here's the only thing I would like to do. There's a reason from being on the building commission and stuff, and I know one of the arguments is that possibly only 10% of the permits that are taken out get inspected. Okay, I can understand that. However, when you get into HVAC, electrical, plumbing, roofs, and a few others, you're talking contractors that require licenses, and you're talking equipment that somebody can very easily get hurt on. I know as you look at this, it says that you have to get a permit for that. Okay, my concern is, okay, I'm going to take out a permit on a house, and I'm going to do this and this, and all of a sudden, along with this, here comes a new HVAC system. Now, just for example, if you want to flip your consent agenda over, which you don't have to, there were only 4 permits taken out last month for HVAC. Now, I can guarantee you there was one hell of a lot more units than that put in. My concern is that we have the work that is done by a qualified mechanic, done by a qualified mechanic. Okay, that's the big thing that I'm looking for. I just like to leave it at that and say, that's my basic concern. If we can lock up something in there, or really say, okay, if I start out into this project and I'm going to have a $10,000 free permit, and all of a sudden there's a new HVAC system in there, I want to see a fine or something for that person, because they're blatantly ignoring the rules. I can give you an example of where there was a job done, an HVAC job, for probably, I'm going to guess at close to $100,000, that there was never a permit taken out for in the city of Freeport. Completely backdoored in. You know, that's not the kind of stuff we're looking for. A permit is put into place so that the unit can be inspected and it's safe for the occupant of that house.
Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Tom, you know your stuff with HVAC, and I admire the fact that you have a lot of knowledge in that, but we have people that will get permits or not get permits. The difference between the $6,000 and the $10,000 is only $4,000. If they weren't going to get their permit when they had a $6,000 repair, they may not get that permit if they have a $10,000 repair. I think Alderman Chesney is trying to show that, you know, honest people are going to be honest, dishonest people are going to be dishonest. But if you have people that are buying property in Freeport and they want to do a repair, it's very difficult to get a porch rebuilt, to put in some windows and put in carpeting, and do that for less than $6,000. Obviously, they need the permit for the windows or the HVAC, and I'm one of the people that always follows the rules. I try really hard, and you know that. You've been in some of our properties and done some of the work. Our situation sometimes is where we have to do the work one year and you gotta wait until another calendar year to finish a renovation. Carpets in a small 3-bedroom house are $3,500, $3,600. That's between tenants on a rental property. And you put in other repairs, and you put in a furnace, and all of a sudden you're starting hitting those thresholds. I always get the permits with the furnace, you know that, because you know who I work with. And I would continue to keep following those rules, but when you're doing a major renovation, you want people to increase their property values in Freeport and make them look pretty and make them look nice. Sometimes it's really hard to do that for that $6,000 mark. I think raising it to the $10,000 will probably make Freeport a better place. I don't think those permit fees are going to be that big of a deal. I think if they're going to break the rules at $6,000, they're definitely going to break the rules at $10,000. So I'm in support of this to the $10,000 because I want Freeport to look nicer, and I'm hoping it'll be the right thing. I'm not going to guarantee that, Alderman Clem. I know your heart's in the right place here too, and we all look at things just a little bit differently. But I hope it is increased to the $10,000. Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
I have to kind of side with Alderman Clem on this one. I know that when we increased the amount last time, I made several trips through my ward on different times and numerous occasions. I didn't see a major increase in the amount of repairs and upkeep on the houses with the change in the permit fee, which is what the intent was, is to make it easier for people to do it. And I just didn't see a bunch of them in my ward being done. Maybe it's just because they weren't doing anything in my ward, I don't know. But another thing that gets me is minor repairs. To me, putting in carpet, putting in windows and stuff, that's not minor repairs. And if you're getting up to $10,000, I know what kind of budget you got, but that ain't no minor repair for me. So we're getting to the point where we're setting it up for major repairs at $10,000 without permit fees. Do we really want to do that? My own opinion is no.
Mayor?
Alderman Buster.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Alderman Chesney and Bradshaw here. I got a quote on siding for my house for $14,000, just siding, you know. And in the past 5 years, I know there's been multi-million-dollar expansions to a building in town, and the contractor I talked with pulled the proper permits, and when contacted the building inspector to come out and inspect something, the inspector told him, "Oh, just text me a pic of it." Didn't come out to inspect it because they were too busy. So if they're too busy to go out and inspect a multi-million-dollar project, why are we going to tax them with going out and inspecting siding jobs or carpeting jobs? That's where I'm at.
Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Andrew, let me just say this, okay? I think you get that I don't have the problem with the $10,000 that much. The $10,000, I can take or leave. The only thing, when Sally brought up, I think, you know, good people are gonna be good, bad people are gonna be bad, but if you give them another $4,000 to play with that, they're probably gonna be a little worse and a little better. That's just an opinion. But my thing isn't so much the dollars on it, okay? My thing is let's make sure that when it comes to the mechanicals and that, all kind of stuff, that it is enforced, that they're taken out. You know, that's my biggest thing. You know, if you're gonna take and put $6,000 or $10,000 on a property, God bless us, because it's an improvement either way. You know, whatever we do to improve something. My major concern is that we lock in the mechanicals and we enforce something if somebody just flat blows that off, because I think that's being done.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, Alderman Clem. There's nothing in our ordinance that prohibits the enforcement. I think that the long history of the city of Freeport is that we don't enforce it, and if we do, it's selective at best. And if we're not even enforcing the current rules, I don't know that it aligns with our priorities to inspect a window install if it doesn't change the structure of the home. I don't know that it aligns in our priorities to look at a siding job or a roof tear off, as long as they hire a licensed contractor. You also got to keep in mind, we require that you hire a licensed contractor for a roof, and if it was to be inspected, it would be inspected by somebody that's not a licensed roofer. So it's a tax, it's not a fee, it's not a public safety issue. Now, if 90% of all the permits and fees were being inspected, perhaps that's a broader conversation for the building commission to see if that needs to be expanded or contracted. What I'm saying is there's nothing in the ordinance that prevents us to inspect and hold people's feet to the fires as it relates to HVAC, electrical, or plumbing. Just historically, we've never enforced it. Now, I'm not blaming the inspector. There's one person that has priorities that probably don't align with an HVAC install when you're comparing that to a blighted property that's going to fall on its neighbor. So I think it comes down to priorities. But the ordinances are presently written that can hold contractors and hold people accountable. I think what this says is let's broaden the scope of the things that we're going to allow and not just have an unnecessary tax, because as you pointed out, we're not even inspecting these particular jobs at all anyways. So at a minimum, we should just call it a tax because it's not a fee. A fee is for a service, and we're not even providing that. So I don't view this as something that is changing what we permit. All this is saying is if we're not going to inspect this, and if we believe that these do not impact health, life, and safety, let's not charge for it. That's it.
Madam Mayor?
Actually, Director Mills, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did, thank you, Mayor. I had 2 points I wanted to address. One of them, I think, is that in the way the ordinance is written, minor repairs, no permit shall be required. And then we later delve into that threshold that we were talking about in the difference. But the no permit being required, if we don't have a permit, if they don't come in and tell us what they're doing, we don't know what they're doing. It's just that simple. It could be a siding job, it could be something more involved, but if the language says that there's not a permit required, then they're not gonna come pull one for that. They could still be free and pull the permit, and then we would know, and then, we could review those. But the way this is currently worded, they don't have to fill out anything because there's no permit required. So we don't know what the job is. So I wanted to address, the number of inspections that occur. You certainly do see work go on out there, but, is it $5,500 or is it $6,002? Again, that's one of the situations that's created by this, whether that permit's required or not. If they were just required, then we would be able to review them, see what the scope of work is, and prioritize based on that. Maybe most siding ones would continue to be relatively simple jobs and not need to be inspected, but there could be contractors that need reviewed more often due to past violations. Having permits required would, they would show up. We would have a more accurate idea of what amount of work they're doing in the city. And it would allow us to, I think, have a better understanding of what work's being done here. The second thing is with the larger jobs, I can think of, to address Alderman Busker's point, in the last month, there was one multi-million-dollar restoration that's been inspected weekly on a property here, and they did something wrong. They had to tear out a lot of work they did to go back in and correct that. Another job, they were getting ready to install the wrong fittings. The next morning they were going to pour footings and have the wrong fittings going from that point on. So those jobs are inspected as well. I think the situation you described was probably more likely a contractor asking, is this okay to use this particular piece or something along those lines. I've seen that happen where rather than take the trip across town, they say, is this the right thing that I can do? And he'll, our inspector communicates well with him. He says yes or no, you need to use X, Y, or Z. Not knowing the details of the situation you described, that's what my hunch is. So I just wanted to clarify those things as we go forward and as you continue with your discussion on it. Mayor?
Alderman McClanahan.
Thank you. Director Mills, taking all our permits, just put all the categories together, approximately what percentage of those do we go out and inspect? Approximately.
I would say it's between 10 and 20 in a given month. It depends on what other projects are occurring. The Hosmer projects need inspections floor by floor, for example. Multiple site visits are made to longer projects, more involved projects. Whereas a residential project maybe need 2 inspections, 1 inspection, or, again, a siding job or something, it may not need one.
10 to 20% of all our permits are inspected currently by an inspector?
The ones that cross our desk, that's approximately, yeah. Again, we don't know which ones, when they're not permitted, they're not pulled. It's much harder to find those.
Okay, so out of the ones that we know of, we're inspecting about 10 or at most 20% of those. What percentage of those are for what we would fall under the minor repairs?
I would have to look at the records because, things can swing in different months. We could certainly, I couldn't say, to tell you the honest truth, how many were for minor. As you say, with minor, as it's worded, no permits required. So, it could be as low as none because nobody needs to come pull the permit if it's under 6,000.
Okay.
So it doesn't show up in his file of what he needs to go inspect.
And what do you believe would be further inspected, higher than 10 to 20% if you were to have all minor repairs be subject to a permit?
I think it would be, it would improve the way that we can make sure all contractors are having their work inspected. I think there's some contractors that pull very few permits. We've run into some of them that simply interpret this rule wrong. When they've been called out on it, they say, oh, I thought we didn't need it. No, when you build a sunroom or a deck or something, that's a structural change. You need to get that permit, and they've played by the rules ever since. But we run into that sometimes because the language says no permit required under 6,000. They're looking at the cost. They're not necessarily looking at, you know, the details of it that we have spelled out as you continue to read this. They look at the dollar amount first, and they say, okay, I'm under the threshold, I don't need to go down there.
So you're still talking about things that actually are required by statute currently right now, but what about those that are, if you were to go with your suggestion there and permit every minor repair, what percentage of those would be inspected?
We'd have to see how many we were gonna start seeing, whether it would be a flood come in, whether it would be a trickle, and we'd have to look at the time available and split it up accordingly. I guess I can't give you an answer because I don't know what that increase would be.
Okay, Mayor, one more follow-up.
Alderman Clanton?
All right. Well, the way I see it in here is we've got 1442.13, building permit and fire prevention plan reviews. 1442.14, plumbing permit fees. 1442.15, electrical permit fees. 14.4216, mechanical permit fees. The next one, for the permit fees. Commercial contractor license fees. Canopy, marquee, or street clock permits and fees. Sign permits and fees. Permits for development subject to stormwater detention regulations. Issuance of permits to homeowners. Application for building permits, plot diagrams, compliance with zoning code, exception for farm buildings, demolition permits. Those are all the things that are excluded from this no permit the thing that we're talking about here. Those are all permitted. And for the plain language of the statute says it's no permission required for minor repairs or alterations which do not involve structural changes, installation of new units or connections, and which do not exceed proposed here 10,000. So all those things that we're talking about outside of it, structural changes, whether they get one or not, it's required. Installation of new units, you know, whether they get it or not, it's required. So ultimately, all these other things. Now, I'm sympathetic and interested in the point that Alderman Clem raised in regards to do we need to look at our overall structure as to what happens when someone violates it. But there's two aspects of that. One of them, which I think we've hit on tonight, we're hitting 10 to 20% of what's coming in here. What possible public policy do we have in between saying, well, there's a difference between 6 and 10 that we're going to have to catch that's actually related to that? There's a lot of tangential, well, they're not getting it for X, they're not getting it for Y, but it's required. And if it's required, they're going to get it. And I think the onus on the public policy should not be, can you justify a 6,000 to 10? It should be more, can you justify the 6,000 price? I haven't heard a good justification for the 6,000 price compared to the 10,000. Therefore, I think the 10,000 is reasonable. However, setting that aside going forward, Alderman Clem, to your point on what happens for violations, I do think that's not covered under the change that we're making here under the 6 to 10. The 6 to 10 can be made without having any effect on that. But your point on what happens if there is a violation, sure, if somebody says, I know there's a 10 to 20% chance that my permit's going to get pulled anyway on it. I know that there's a higher percent chance on that if I don't get it, I might get away with it. And so they play the odds. You know, say, okay, I can put in 6, 7, 8 of these, and if I get caught once, I just have to pay, you know, the permit fee for the one time I'm caught. I get that, and I'm sympathetic to looking at that. But I think that portion is separate from this ordinance change right here, and we shouldn't lose sight of the 6 to 10 is the one thing we're doing here. Going from 6 to 10 makes sense to me. Looking at what happens when someone violates it, and looking at how do we apply the number of percentage of inspections that we do as a whole, I think is part of a broader comprehensive discussion we should have. I just don't think that that's affected by this. So I support the 6 to 10, I haven't seen a policy argument I think that would justify keeping it at 6, so I'll vote for the change tonight.
Mayor.
Alderman Chisney?
Thank you. Director Mills, prior to coming on board here at the city, you were the president of Orangeville, correct?
Yes, correct.
Did you require your residents to pull a permit for windows, siding, or roofs?
I believe so, yes.
The answer is no. You didn't.
Do you have that, what section is that in the code? Do you have that pulled handy?
I don't have your code, but no, you did not require that.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Clem?
Thank you very much, Alderman McClanathan. I appreciate your input and Director Mills. I specifically asked that to be looked at before we got to this point of debating this on the floor from the city manager, and it was not asked of that department. So I think Peter brings up a very good point, and I will vote for it based on this, that we can go. Here's where I come from for being on the building commission, okay? The building commission has just spent months totally revising the permit fees and everything, and have made them extremely reasonable and to the point that everybody can call one in, do the paperwork online, do everything and have it over with, okay? Very simple operation. I noticed a couple that were taken out on some HVAC stuff with $33 or something like that, you know, minor detail type stuff. But I believe that if we take and just blow off the top on this or go to $10,000, I believe that if we don't do something to back up the others, that we need them for this and make the public aware of this, you're basically going to see a drastic change in permit numbers, number one, and permits for mechanical stuff, number two. So if everybody can give me a warm fuzzy feeling that we can go back and say, hey, let's take a look at this and see if there's any way we can keep in conversation on it, then I'm for it. That was my main concern, was that I knew once somebody started in a $10,000 project, everybody was out the door, and like Alex brings up a good point now that, and was there on the $6,000 thing, if you don't need to tell me about it, I don't know you're doing it anyway. You know, so, yeah.
Alderman Busker?
I would like to also look at this further from what Alderman Clem's looking at as far as if someone's doing it wrong, taking action. I mean, I think one inspector for everything that's done in the city I don't think that's enough. We need to look at maybe increasing that department at some point. If we're only getting 10 to 20% inspections on what permits we're pulling now, that's an issue. So I definitely think there's more discussion on this, but I think this should pass.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward 2017-41.
Second. I don't think we have a motion on the second, so we either
Yeah, it's a second reading.
If you want to call the question, we can call the question.
I'd like to call the question.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2017-41?
Clem?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Busker?
Aye.
Brashaw?
Aye.
Keister?
No.
Chesney?
Aye.
Passes 7-1.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
if I may say something real quickly on the subject, when Alderman Clem was bringing up about HVACs and stuff, I know that a few years ago, where Alex Mills come on, or Director Mills, I was told by several contractors in Freeport that sometimes they get permits when they put those things in, and sometimes they don't, because they had to physically come down to City Hall and put them in, and apply for the permit, and then go back and put it in. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Mills, they can do that on computer or online now?
Yes, they can pay online, they can also call. We encourage them to just call and describe the project so we can give them quicker service.
If I may continue, Mayor. My point being that we have had practices like this in the past because we hadn't modernized until just recently. So there may be some contractors out there at this time that are still doing it without permits because they don't know to go online, and maybe they're just in the habit of doing it that way. But we may want to look at that and address that as well.
Okay, let's move on to item number 8. We have the first reading of ordinance 2017-42. Madam Clerk, could you please read this into the record?
An ordinance repealing Chapter 258 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois regarding the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners.
This would have normally been a discussion item that City Manager Crow would have taken, but in light of his flight being delayed, Attorney Sosnowski will present this.
What you have before you with ordinance 2742, as well as the ordinances that will come after that, 43 through 47, are all ordinances which would, after the passage of 42, would then change the code to coincide with what will happen, assuming that ordinance 42 is approved. Ordinance 42 would remove and repeal the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. The reason that this came about is when City Manager Crow came into the city of Freeport, he had a discussion with me regarding the uniqueness of Freeport and having a Board of Water and Sewer Commission. We did a little research into this and were unable to find any statutory authority for even a home rule municipality to have, excuse me, a Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners in the event that the utility was not serving more than one community. So as an example, typically when you have or you see a Board of Water Commissioners or a Board of Sewer Commissioners, it's because the utility is serving more than one municipality. There isn't an intergovernmental agreement. It's a shared utility, in which case then there's a board in place to ensure that not one municipality has more control over the other. So each of the member municipalities, if you will, get to appoint a certain number of commissioners that then serve on a commission which governs the day-to-day operations of the utility itself. What we have in Freeport is a water system and a sewer system that services the city of Freeport. You could, if you wish, serve other areas or other communities, but you would most likely do so by intergovernmental agreement, which is what we see now nowadays. So the creation of the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners is actually very unique to the city of Freeport, with the type of system that you have, in that it only services your municipality. In light of that, from a legal perspective, I don't believe that it's proper that a Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners functions in the way in which it is functioned here in Freeport, in making rules and regulations to govern the system, because statutorily under the Illinois Municipal Code, those regulations would fall then to the City Council. You do have an entire utility chapter which is incorporated into your code, which has the requisite rules and regulations to govern your utility. So many of the ordinances that come after this repealing ordinance that City Manager Crow and I are recommending is just really changing and cleaning up that language to remove the reference to the Board of Water and Sewer Commission. It's also cleanup language where we have inserted the correct terms for city manager when necessary or city council when necessary, again to coincide with state statute in the Illinois Municipal Code. I can certainly answer any questions that you may have, but that is the reason why the ordinance is before you tonight, is really just to bring the city code in line with the Illinois Municipal Code and also in line now with the city manager form of government that you have.
Any discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to move it forward.
Second. Actually, in light of Lowell's request, he would like to ask for a suspension of the rules simply because he doesn't want to drag on the hiring of the director position and make it last longer. So he would like to see us get this passed this evening so that way he can move forward, because he's had several applicants that he thinks are very promising. So,
Mayor?
Alderman Busker.
Motion to suspend.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw, which is non-debatable and needs a 2/3 majority.
Mayor?
Yes.
Point of order. So we procedurally, Alderman Keister made a motion to move forward. I think there was a second, then there's going to be a motion to suspend the rules. Who was the second on the motion? Alderman Chesney was the second for the motion.
So we actually have to withdraw that.
You do a motion and a second, and then you make a motion to suspend the rules, and then a second, and then a roll call vote to suspend the rules.
And then the original motion is voted on, I believe.
On the original motion?
Yeah, the motion that we made, and then they make the motion to suspend the rules, that gets voted on first, and then after if it passes, then we vote on the
Mayor?
the original.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The original motion was to move forward.
Right,
We don't have a motion for approval.
right.
Can I amend my motion for approval?
Do we need that first? Which comes first? The
The
suspension?
motion to suspend should come first
Yeah.
procedurally.
Okay.
So we need you to withdraw your motions. So then before you is the suspension of the rules for immediate consideration of,
Ordinance 2017-42.
yep,
Madam Mayor.
1742.
And this is, the motion to suspend the rules and
Correct.
stuff is just for the one
Yes,
ordinance at the time? Thank you. No problem.
right.
Thank you.
So Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules on 2017-42?
Madam Mayor, then, does the suspension of the rules then preclude the possibility for discussion on
No,
the
you can
underlying?
self-discussion,
Okay.
Ready?
yes.
Clem?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Busker?
Aye.
Brashaw?
Aye.
Keister?
Aye.
Chesney?
Aye.
Clem?
Aye.
Oh, gosh. That's my
Can I
fault.
get a second
Yes,
one?
I've got you
Try.
all the way through here, sorry. So the suspension passes 8-0.
Okay, so now before you for final passage is ordinance 2017-42. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Smith?
do we know, have we looked into the genesis of this structure? Do we know why it even exists? And have we done our due diligence and we understand that there isn't a purpose for this commission?
I did a little bit of research into the Board of Water and Sewer Commission and how it was initially formed in the city of Freeport and found that it was back in the 1930s. I cannot promise you that in the 1930s that the Illinois Municipal Code didn't read differently than the way it does now. The records that I have, the statutory records, date back to the 1960s, which state that these water and sewer commissions were to be formed by way of an organization of multiple municipalities and not just one. So procedurally, I can't promise that in the 1930s that it was properly formed, but there is the possibility that the Illinois Municipal Code read differently then. And for some reason, when the Illinois Constitution was rewritten and the Illinois Municipal Code was then, changes were made to that something then was missed.
And Mayor, if I may, and the change that we're proposing to implement now does not preclude the possibility of servicing other communities. We just have to do it by an IGA, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister?
Point of order, I don't think we have a motion as yet on the floor to approve this, since I withdrew mine.
Yeah, it goes immediately to final passage.
Okay, but I don't believe there's any motion to approve it. There was just a motion to suspend the rules. There was no motion made to approve this once I
We haven't
withdrew
gotten
mine.
that far, we're in discussion. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan?
thank you. I had an opportunity, I suppose, to just reach out. My main concern in regards to this one and all the others was are we going to have the ability to have smooth operation through that 2-week period? Because my understanding is there's probably still some additional ordinances you guys are going to bring to us to make some, to finalize all the changes on it. My understanding, I believe, is Manager Crow is comfortable that you're going to be able to operate under this structure if these all go through tonight. And Attorney Sinowski, do you foresee any challenges to operations over the next 2 weeks if we put these through tonight?
None.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem?
I'd like to back up or ask again what Alderman Keister asked. we made one vote for suspension of the rules, correct?
Correct,
That did not cover a yes or no on the ordinance.
correct.
We need to make that motion.
No, not on the second, not on the second reading.
It's not a second reading.
When you go to.
We haven't even had the first reading of it. It has never been on the floor. We put it on the floor, took it off the floor, put the suspension of the rules on, took it off. The ordinance itself has not been on the floor for a vote.
So from a parliamentary procedure point of view, there are a couple of different ways that I've seen items move from first to second reading, and it's really, this goes to your rules and how you typically function and how you're comfortable in functioning. In some municipalities, there is a motion to approve an ordinance and a second and a vote taken just on the initial first reading, and then it's moved to second reading. I've seen other communities that make the motion to move the item to second reading. That motion is then voted on, and then discussion is held, and then the item, then there's a motion to approve the item, and then the vote is then taken at that point in time. So procedurally, I think it's up to you and how you have typically operated. I will say that generally speaking, discussion occurs after a motion is made, an item is seconded, and an item is properly on the floor. So I think that that's the piece that we're probably missing at this point, that it sounds like you're used to, which is that after something is moved to second reading, then you would make it, someone would make a motion, there would be a second made, and then discussion would occur.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Okay, just so we're procedurally correct, because it's getting a little goofy. So what happens, or at least historically what's happened is that the Madam Clerk reads the ordinance into the record, and then there's discussion. And then once discussion seems to have, we've met the discussion parameters, then there's a motion to approve in a second. And then after the motion to approve in a second, then somebody will say, I make a motion to suspend the rules, and then that's non-debatable and requires a supermajority vote of 2/3. And then if that's passed, then it goes directly on the floor for a vote that night. Is that not how we're doing it anymore?
If that's historically how you've done it, that's how you can do that then.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
I would just appreciate that if we did it the old way, especially because of the fact that we're eliminating a commission and doing this kind of stuff. If it was a minor thing, I don't want somebody to say, come in tomorrow and say, wait, you guys did this for 37 years this way, and now all of a sudden one vote on suspension of the rules. We're on the same page to put it through, I believe. I'd like to see 2 votes and do it.
So would someone like to make a motion to put this on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion for the passage of ordinance 2017-42 by Alderman Buster, seconded by Alderman Keister. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw. Aye. Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0.
Okay, item number 9 is the first reading of ordinance 2017-43. Madam Clerk, would you please read this into the record?
An ordinance amending Title VI, Administration of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois, to create a new Chapter 253, providing for the position of Executive Director of Water and Sewer.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2017-43 by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Ross.
Mayor,
Alderman
move to
Smith.
suspend the rules.
Second.
So we have a motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Chesney to suspend the rules on ordinance 2017-43, which is non-debatable and needs to pass by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the suspension of the rules.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Suspension passes 8-0.
So now before you for final passage is ordinance 2017-43. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance?
Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you.
Ms. Sosnowski, I hope I said your name correctly.
Yes, you did.
This really doesn't change anything. We still have an executive director, correct? Is we have in the past, with the exception that they answer to the city manager. Is that
That's
how I'm
absolutely
understanding?
correct, yes. So this is a new ordinance, and it's moving that position from the previous chapter that it was included in, and it's now moving it up to Title VI administration and placing that same position within that section of the code with the same duties.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mayor?
Alderman McClanahan?
Thank you. I apologize. I did not get a chance to look at this one subsection, and I meant to as closely as I wanted to. 253.02, appointments. Says the city manager shall have the authority to appoint, affix the compensation of, and discharge the executive director in water and sewer. Have we looked, does that mirror because we put in here also earlier in the code that this position will be considered department head. Does that section mirror the same appointment, compensation, discharge that we have for the other department heads?
I just need to look real quick.
And the reason I bring it up, I know, well, like in part, one of the things that when I read through this, was it talked about, or I know, there was some of the other department heads, it's the appointments, he appoints with the advice and consent of council. I believe from all the other ones, I think is how it is in the language. And so I'm just not sure if this mirrors that, or if there's another section that says appoints is with the advice and consent of council.
And you're referring to the city manager ordinance that was previously approved? Because none of the department head ordinances have come through yet for approval as far as those changes. Like when we look at Department of Public Works and so on and so on. You have not amended those
Right.
yet.
Okay. Right, understood. Yeah.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney?
Thank you. Alderman McClanahan, is your question, do we have to consent to this, or is your question on the compensation?
Well, historically, that's the thing, because I don't remember if we've had this discussion or not. And I forgot to look further into that before tonight. On both of those, if I recall, didn't we have to prove compensation? And then I know we did advice and consent of appointments. I'm just not sure if we're looking to change that or not.
Mayor, if I may. Yeah, what we did in the past was, as you'll recall, a memorandum was drafted by the previous mayor of setting compensation. I think our only authority for formal approval was just to make sure that the money was in the budget. But I don't know that we have gone department head by department head. I know that we did do it a little bit different for the city engineer, but I think historically we agreed to framework and structure with the budget being still overseen by the city council, because I recognize the same thing that you did. But as far as the city manager, my understanding is that we do not have to consent to these particular appointments any longer under the city manager form of government. So the compensation question, Alderman McClanahan, is largely controlled by the budget, but I think best practices for a competent and capable city manager would certainly discuss compensation with the city council to make sure that it's in line with expectations.
Madam Mayor, if I would, you also have your site letter agreement. I don't know if that ordinance will be changed or will be removed, but you have the $10,000 threshold that requires it to go back to council, at least in the former form of government. So whether you carry that through, any of these MOUs would still be brought forth in front of the council, assuming that they exceed that amount. If I'm correct.
I'm not familiar with any of those, so I wouldn't know, but Alderman Chesney's remark is correct that under the Illinois Municipal Code, these particular positions would not need to come before the council for advice and consent.
So, Madam Mayor.
Alderman McClanahan?
Thank you. That was the main question on that. And so then, as you indicated, we're going to be having the other ordinances come to us down the road to make sure they're in compliance with the IMC and this form of government. Okay, great, thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will have the final passage of ordinance 2017-43. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on this approval?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney. And that passes 8-0.
Moving on to item number 10 is the first reading of ordinance 2017-44. Madam Clerk, would you please read this into the record?
An ordinance amending Title IV Utilities, Chapter 1042, Water Generally of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois, removing reference to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and adding City Manager.
Any discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
We have a motion to approve made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Busker, and a motion to suspend the rules by Alderman Clem, seconded by Alderman Smith. On the suspension of the rules, it is non-debatable, it needs a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules for ordinance 2017-44?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
So now before you is the final passage of this ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the final passage of ordinance 2017-44?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0.
On to item number 11, the first reading of ordinance 2017-45. Madam Clerk, please read this into the record.
An ordinance amending Part 10, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title IV Utilities, Chapter 1046, Sewers Generally of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois, removing reference to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and adding City Manager.
Any discussion on this ordinance?
Mayor,
Alderman Busker.
motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2017-45 by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
We have a motion to suspend the rules by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Smith, which is non-debatable and must pass by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on suspending the rules for ordinance 2017-45?
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
That passes 8-0.
So now before you is the final passage of ordinance 2017-45. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
Item number 12 is first reading of ordinance 2017-46. Madam Clerk, please read that into the record.
An ordinance amending Part 10, Streets, Utilities, and Public Service Code, Title IV Utilities, Chapter 1048, Sewer Rates and Revenues of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois, removing reference to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and adding City Manager.
Any discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Busker?
motion to move it forward.
I think we need that to be a motion of approval, right?
Motion approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Keister on ordinance 2017-46.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to suspend the rules. Second.
We have a motion to suspend the rules by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Ross, which is non-debatable, and this passed by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the suspension of the rules for 2017-46.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
So now before you is the final passage. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the final passage of ordinance 2017-46.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0.
Moving on to item number 13 is the first reading of ordinance 2017-47. Madam Clerk, please read this for the record.
An ordinance amending Part 10, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title 4, Utilities, Chapter 1050, Storm Sewers of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois, removing reference to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and adding City Manager.
Any discussion?
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker.
I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Is that Ross? And we have a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2017-47 by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Ross, which is non-debatable, must pass by 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, please take the roll on suspension of the rules.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
So now before you is the final passage of ordinance 2017-47. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0.
Okay, item number 14, first reading of ordinance 2017-47. Please read this for the record.
An ordinance amending Part 10, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, adding Chapter 1034, Outdoor Parklets, to the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois.
Director Mills, would you like to explain?
Thank you, Mayor. So ordinance 2017-48 deals with the parklets that City Council had previously explored and directed staff to complete a review of. Alderman McClanathan had drafted a very solid foundation with his ordinance, and incorporating some of the items from that and reviewing ordinances from other communities. Staff drafted a ordinance on outdoor parklets that then went to Attorney Sosnowski for review and City Manager Crow as well. So what you have before you is a product of at least 3 persons' input on that, if not more. So this would require a license for a restaurant to operate in the right-of-way, either the sidewalk cafe license that we currently have in place or an outdoor parklet license if they would wish to use any portion of the right-of-way in the street. This details the application, which would need to be submitted, detailing a description of how they would use furniture in that space, what would be sold there, how many patrons could be accommodated, a written plan for the measurements of that area, for the measures the applicant would take to make sure that the provisions of this ordinance were complied with, and some other provisions as well that the community development director would review. There's an insurance and security requirement as well. Fees and duration, it would be a $100 license fee, which would expire no later than November 15th of the year in which it's issued. One provision here that I think probably needs revisited: applications for an outdoor parklet license may be submitted at any time. Since inserting that portion, I realize that might open the barn door for somebody to apply for the next 3 years licenses at the same time, or do some funny business with that, so that part should probably be revised. The license wouldn't be transferable or assignable. The city manager could alter, revoke, or suspend the license if the license agreement was violated in any fashion, or if in their judgment there was public disruption being caused. But the main heavy lifting of the ordinance is that a business would enter into a license agreement to use that space. In fact, they'd be licensed by the city to use that space, and they'd be agreeing to follow these provisions, of which there are 13 here under 1034.07. In my mind, the difference being in the way we've codified like sidewalk cafe ordinances. If somebody's not following them, we could go do an ordinance violation, or we could kind of, hopefully just do the warning and leave it at that. But we would pursue it in that manner. In this manner, instead of going through a fine or something like that, we could simply go through warning or, or revoking the license if the behavior, if it was warranted. So it's just slightly different, but it seems in line with what other communities have done to better control that space, which is the space. Will the council need to go through these provisions to license agreements, or no? Okay. I guess I'll stop talking at that point, but as you all have this. But,
Director Mills, by this ordinance, who owns the parklet, the city or the approved applicant?
by this ordinance, the applicant would own the furniture in the parklet, the other items in the parklet. This would simply be licensing the space to them. There are other communities where the community has built the parklet and then licensed not only the physical space, but the deck, so to speak, the parklet itself as well. This ordinance doesn't have that provision in it, I don't believe.
Mayor.
So who has to be responsible for the building of the parklet?
Well, this one doesn't provide for the city to build a parklet, so the restaurant owner would build the parklet themselves and incur that cost.
Should it be specific in there, or doesn't matter?
That would typically be driven by the license agreement, so.
Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Director Mills, so if I understand this correctly, because I don't mean to be ignorant here, but I just would like it explained to me. Parklet is basically a sidewalk cafe, correct?
Yes, it'd be basically a parking space out there converted to restaurant seating, or outdoor seating, if you will.
May I? Sure. Thank you. So the reason for this is so they can have smokers eat outside, or is it the reason just to expand their dining experience? I'm not sure what this would be utilized for. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, it would be for several of those reasons if they wanted to. Mainly to have more outdoor seating would be what the primary goal of this would be.
Mayor.
Alderman Clanton.
Thank you. You see these in a variety of ways. A lot of the cities that have sidewalk cafes also have the outdoor parklet, and they are two separate things. One of them is on the sidewalk area. One of them is kind of in the parklet area. The right next to the curb there. Again, you can go online and see a variety of pictures in regards to places that have done it, and there's a wide variety of what these end up looking like. Now, granted, they have to conform with the broad parameters of the ordinance, but the idea basically being it gives some of these owners some additional options for additional dining experiences. If they end up taking advantage of the opportunity to do so and do it, that's going to be up to them. But this is just allowing, if they want to go ahead and provide that opportunity, some parameters and a mechanism for which they can do so.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Director Mills, you had indicated that there was a section in here that you thought needed revision, I believe.
Just the very last sentence of 1034.04 regarding the submittal of applications. I think we could probably come up with something better than that if,
Okay.
maybe the first of the year or something, but.
Follow up, Mayor.
Sure.
All right, so if we move this forward tonight, is there any reason why we, pardon me, would need to suspend the rules and move this forward? Or if we had it for the second reading, you would be able to have a revision for that in 2 weeks?
I don't believe there is anybody that's asking for it. We're just trying to be proactive. Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Miller, that's correct. We don't have any pending requests for this at the moment, but this would certainly establish something where, somebody could start to think of how much they want to invest in this space if they wanted to do it for the second half of the summer, something along those lines. Or just plan for next year, maybe. Someone will have to go first.
So
we could go to second reading.
So would you be comfortable with changing that one line at the end of 1034.04 to put a date on there instead of any time?
Yeah, we could think that part out better, but otherwise, at the staff level, we feel it's solid, and Attorney Signowski's reviewed it as well. So,
Mayor,
Alderman Buster.
I didn't get a chance to read through this ordinance. Is there provisions in there to make sure that snow removal will be not impacted in the wintertime with anything in the right of way there.
They will, the license will expire on no later than November 15th. So they would have to have their stuff out of that space by November 15th if it was gonna be a freak snowstorm year. There's provisions where the city manager can, basically have them get the stuff out and pull it if there was something gonna happen like that.
Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. I wanted one more question, Alex, if you don't mind. I was reading item number 7 said alcohol shall not be dispensed within the outdoor parklet area. Any alcohol consumed must be incidental to food service. So how I'm reading that is alcohol can be served, but it has to be ordered with the food or with food service. Is that correct?
That's how I've interpreted that, and that, I believe that section specifically, Attorney Sosnowski had inserted.
Yes, so dispense, what that means with alcohol shall not be dispensed, it means it's not to, there isn't to be a portable bar outside in the parklet area that's set up to dispense alcohol. It could be served at a table once it's brought from the inside to the outside and consumed with food, but there couldn't be a temporary bar set up outside in the parklet.
Follow?
Sure.
Director Mills, so is this saying that it could or could not be a bar, or it would have to be a restaurant? I mean, because sometimes if somebody was going to a bar and they wanted to just consume cocktails outside, does this allow that or not allow that?
The way I would defer to Attorney Sosnowski on this provision.
In the parklet, the food service, the alcohol would have to be incidental to food service. So you would have to have ordered an appetizer or something to consume that along with the alcohol. Now, we could change that. This is just a suggestion based off of language that I've seen, and typically this is suggested so that it doesn't just become a place that's outdoor where people are only consuming alcohol, and trying to encourage others to also have some food service along with that.
Thank you for that information.
Mayor,
Alderman Smith.
but to be clear, we're talking about a public space being converted for use by a business owner. We're not talking about licensing private space to expand the business or anything like that.
Right.
I wonder if it might not be useful to add some definitions to the words parklet and sidewalk cafe in order to distinguish the two and to add some clarity to this ordinance as well.
Director Mills.
So at the beginning of this, we do have where, if it is gonna be upon the sidewalk, we direct them to the ordinances already in place for a sidewalk cafe, and that includes fencing and some other requirements. The way that the application section is structured, keeping in mind that I believe the city manager is gonna be the license officer who will ultimately issue or not issue the license. They need to describe the area that they're gonna be. So somebody, they could apply for more than one space back to back, but you may have the city manager say, no, it's just gonna be one space, for instance. So that would be, in the instance of issuing the license, that space is gonna be clearly defined. Rather than spelling it out in here, because you may have a different situation somewhere that allows for flexibility, but.
Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. And just so you know, I am in support of this. I'm just asking a few questions to clarify since I wasn't understanding some of this. I see that it does require a large proof of insurance, which is a good thing. What I don't see here is an applicant fee. Is there a fee associated with this that perhaps I'm not seeing or that you perhaps told us about already?
It's $100 in section 1034.04, fees and duration. That same section where we were gonna add definition to the when people could submit applications.
Oh, I missed it. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
last time this was discussed, I asked I asked Alderman McClanathan here, and we said we'd talk about it. And that hasn't happened. What about a place like, that has requested in the past, like a Fiesta Cancun, Fiesta Tequila, VFW, someplace that has a parking lot? Could this be used in a situation like that?
Possibly.
Madam Mayor,
Director Mills.
I think it would come down to what they propose to do and what the license officer would ultimately feel if it makes sense or not. A shopping center place, for instance, isn't going to have a public right-of-way nearby at all. The space in their parking lot is actually a public drive. So they would have to work it out with whoever owns that property, manages their private property to do that, and, you know, the odds are that's not probably gonna happen due to liability, all that stuff. But the license officer would ultimately review these applications, and if one made sense that's outside the box, they could grant it.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem?
could we work on putting, over the next couple weeks as this comes forward again, could we take a look at clarifying something like that? Because, you know, I can think of situations where both these people own the building and the parking lot, so there would need to be no debate on who owned the property out front or anything like that.
Well, in an instance like that, they would be doing an outdoor seating area. So we already have provisions in our code when, like, Maria's Pizza, just as an example, or somebody wants to do an outdoor seating area and do this in. You're talking about maybe an area that's not hugged up against the building, but is somewhere still on their property, or somewhere within public property at that point.
I would think of it, to me, I would think of it close to the building that's there. The one thing I want to ask a question, and maybe Chief Barkalow knows it over there. I know there's an issue when you have these outside deals when it comes to smoking. You know, that was mentioned. To me, my belief is, and I could be totally wrong, if you have a waitress serving that area, you cannot smoke in it. Is that correct? Because it's working area? We got a lot of head shaking. I think it's one place we should look, because a primary place I remember came up at one time just in a discussion, and it's the county that monitors this. Without a doubt, it isn't the city. As long as it's an area being served by a person of employment at the place of work, they can't have them in a smoking atmosphere, which makes sense, but I'd like to have somebody clarify that.
Mayor? Alderman Chesney?
Just an observation, Alderman Clem, before we get too much in the legalese on this.
Sure.
I think the purpose and the spirit of this particular ordinance is to offer some latitude to the city manager and community development. Under item 1034-06, it says that the city manager can revoke or suspend any license if it is seen as being of public disruption. So before we go into the definitions, before we go down that, I think that we need to let this run a little bit, or nothing's going to happen other than just another ordinance that clogs our codifieds. And this does give sweeping authority to the city manager, or his or her, or his designee, which is likely to be the community development director, to modify this as needed, because I think every situation, it's going to be a moving target, and it's going to have to be modified as you go along, because every situation is going to be different.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem?
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, and I do support the idea, and we'll vote to move it forward. I just want to make sure if we got some glitches in them, at least we talk about it along the way if something's obvious. You know. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Busker?
Has there been a motion to move this forward to second reading? I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move this forward to second reading by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Keister. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance?
Mayor?
Alderman Keister?
Since there is going to be some revisions and stuff, I would like to request that it be put on the committee of the whole agenda next week for further discussions and to review any revisions on it.
Do we need a motion for that?
I would make it a motion that we have it committee of the whole next week for discussion.
I just second it, so I mean, it's a place that we can have it for discussion. If we discuss it, fine. If we move it on, fine, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's still a little more discussion needs to be done on it, and that would be an ideal place to do it.
So we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Clem, to move this to the committee of the whole next week. Mayor? Alderman Smith?
So if the language of this ordinance is significantly changed in the discussion of FCOW, does that mean we have to have two readings of the ordinance?
No. So if it's moved forward out of the FCOW, then it'll automatically go to the second reading at the next meeting.
Mayor?
Alderman,
Thank you. Alderman Smith, generally what happens is if there's agreement on the language for changes, we'll put it in the form of an amendment, it'll be attached in the second reading. So because there's already been a motion moving forward, there'll be a motion to amend, and then we'll make the motion amend to adopt.
But I think Director Mills knows a little bit better of what maybe we need to make some changes on. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion on item number 14? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 15, the first reading of ordinance 2017-49. Madam Clerk, please read this into the record.
An ordinance amending section 288.19 of the codified ordinances of the city of Freeport, Illinois regarding medical and life insurance.
Attorney Sosnowski, would you like to give your input on this ordinance, please?
Sure. This is just an ordinance that amends the code outlining what the COBRA payments are, or COBRA share is for health insurance, and the fact that that will be going up. It will be going up effective August 1st, 2017. And again, it's just an update of what the monthly premiums will be at that point in time. We just received this information from your health insurance provider, and so this is just an update of that.
So this is a housekeeping item?
That's correct, yes. It doesn't change the percentages other than what you've had in the past, and then the actual rates themselves are going up slightly.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Clem for the approval of 2017-49. So this will be automatically laid over to the next city council meeting.
Mayor. Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
We have a motion to suspend the rules made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker for the immediate passage, which is non-debatable and must be passed by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the suspension of the rules.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Abstain.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Abstain.
Keister.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, that was abstain. Okay, thank you. Chesney.
Aye.
A motion passes 5-0. Or wait, that's probably not 2/3.
So refigure that one.
Mayor,
So, Alderman Keister.
I just want to get a clarification. I know why the three of us did not vote on this. To vote to suspend the rules, but not actually voting on the item itself, which we are covered under, would we have to abstain from voting a suspension of the rules?
I don't think so.
Would that be a conflict? It's just voting on the ordinance itself.
Correct.
Okay, and can I make another motion to suspend the rules then and have it voted through, or is there another way you can do
You could
that?
conduct a new roll call, because that wasn't obviously.
Yeah, that was, I think there was some misunderstanding on several of our parts. That-
I would take another roll call.
Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules for 2017-49?
Thank you. Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw. Keister.
Aye.
And Chesney.
Aye.
And now that clearly passes 8-0.
Okay, so now before you for final passage is ordinance 2017-49. Any further discussion?
Mayor.
Alderman Smith.
I just want to clarify that I have a pecuniary interest in this measure, and so and that's the purpose for my abstention.
Mhm. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2017-49.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Abstain.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Abstain.
Keister.
Abstain.
Chesney.
Aye.
That does pass by simple majority.
Okay, item number 16 is a notice of public hearing. Madam Clerk, would you please read this entire paragraph into the record?
For for the notice of public hearing regarding State of Illinois paratransit vehicle grant for the City of Freeport and Stevenson County. The City of Freeport will hold a public hearing on June 5th, 2017 at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers at 314 West Stevenson Street for the purpose of considering a project for the Illinois Department of Transportation's general authority to make such grants, and which is generally described as follows. A, provide continued demand response public transportation throughout Stevenson County. Currently, the city provides approximately 80,000 rides annually. Accordingly, the City of Freeport is applying for 5 handicap accessible, 12 passenger light-duty buses, and 3 handicap accessible minivans, 6 as replacement vehicles, and 2 as expansion vehicles, worth approximately $408,000 collectively. This project will be included in the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program undertaken by the State of Illinois on the behalf of the City of Freeport with state and federal funds. B, relocation. Relocation assistance will not be required. C, environment. This project is being implemented to minimize environmental impact. D, comprehensive planning. This project is in conformance with comprehensive transportation planning area. E, elderly and disabled. All new equipment included in the project will meet ADA accessibility rules for the elderly and persons with disabilities. 1, at the hearing, the City of Freeport will afford an opportunity for interested persons or agencies to be heard with respect to the social, economic, and environmental aspects of the project. Interested persons may submit orally or in writing evidence and recommendations with respect to said project. 2, a copy of the application for a state grant for the purposed project for the intended service area will be made available for public inspection at City Hall, 324 West Stevenson Street, Freeport, Illinois, 61032. Contact person is Forrest Sen, Project Compliance Oversight Monitor, and his phone number is given.
Okay, so we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion to open the public hearing by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw, which now allows anyone in the audience to be able to speak on this subject as well as the council. So, Director Mills, would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll provide a brief overview, and then anyone in the public that wishes to comment would have the opportunity here at the hearing. This is an application, as the clerk read into the record, for the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program. The city submitted an application last year for 4 new buses, and we will be receiving 2 of those this fall. So that's nearly a 1.5 year lag time. So what this is an application at this time for 8 new buses, well, 5 buses and 3 minivans technically, which we could, were we granted this, expect to receive in the fall of 2018. Our fleet of vehicles continues to age and accrue more and more mileage every year. They go down for maintenance more frequently, and repair costs do escalate as the vehicles age. We have been encouraged and instructed by IDOT to apply for what we want and what we need, which is why this is for 8 vehicles. Of the 8, only 6 would be replacements, 2 would be additional vehicles to expand the size of the fleet. That said, that does not mean we will get 8 vehicles. We may get 6, we may get 4. It would just depend on how the applications come in and how the vehicles are distributed. With that said, I guess I could take any questions at this time, or we could do the public comment section, either way.
Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Smith.
just for the purpose of making the record correct, it's been pointed out to me that the address is printed incorrectly in the text that was just read to open the public meeting. City Hall, 324 West Stevenson, is actually 314 is next, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Scribner's error, but I just thought it ought to be pointed out.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman McClatchy.
Thank you. And Director Mills, to the extent that vehicles are acquired through this program, it is entirely covered under the funding for which we apply for annually through the, it's like the state and federal procurement. It has no effect on our local budget.
Correct. This vehicle procurement program is a separate program altogether, and there's no budgetary buy-in or money expended by the city on this.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Ross to close the public hearing. All those in favor of closing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is now closed. Moving on to item number 17. The adoption of Resolution 2017-35. Madam Clerk, please read this into the record.
Resolution authorizing application for a public transportation capital assistance grant with the Illinois Department of Transportation in the city of Freeport, Illinois.
Any further discussion on this resolution?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Clem for the adoption of Resolution 2017-35. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the adoption of Resolution 2017-35.
Mayor, first, could you repeat who seconded that, please?
Clem.
Thank you. And now for the vote. Clem?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Busker?
Aye.
Bradshaw?
Aye.
Keister?
Aye.
Chesney?
Aye.
Resolution is adopted 8-0.
On to item number 19, which is reports of department heads. I know that the city manager desired to have all the department heads write their reports in a summary so that way they could be read beforehand, and some were able to do that and some did not. So as it comes to you in your time to make your report, if you've already written it out, you don't have to repeat that. So if there's a new item you'd like to discuss, then it's time to bring that up. So community development, Alex Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. We've turned on our projector screen. You might want to move if you want to see the map from up there. Would anybody like the lights? Yes. So council had previously requested essentially an update of the demolitions as they progress in the city of Freeport, as our department handles those. So the way that we've chosen to present this to you is visually with a map of the city here. And what we'll do is we'll turn on different layers, which represent the houses that might go under a certain grant, for instance, or might be done in a certain bid package. And these will kind of continue to overlay each other as we walk through this. First is that we've been very aggressive in pursuing owner demolitions. So to this point right now, we have 5 pending owner demolitions within the city. That's where they come in to get a permit from our department to have this demolition carried out by a contractor, in a rare instance by themselves if they possess the skill and equipment to do it. But we follow the code's provisions, advertise it in the paper so that people can comment on it, and then they proceed as the permit is granted. So we have 5 of those that will be occurring certainly no later than August 31st. And we're glad that these owners are taking care of these houses, which need to be demolished, and not tax-paying citizens. We have the Abandoned Properties Program, which is the $72,000 grant from the Illinois Housing Development Authority. We expect to do 7 houses with this. We will be putting these out for bid this week. Advertising will do an opening next week, and we will bring award of these back to you yet this month. As you can see, these are the blue ones that are somewhat close to downtown and Ring It. That's how those worked out. As we move along here, we've got a group of general funded demolitions. These are demolitions that had been posted as fast tracks following state statute to remove blighted properties that are open and vacant. We propose to also put these out for bid in this next week, and also bring them back to council by the end of the month for a bid award. We're attempting to do these in groups no larger than 6 or 7, so that it doesn't become unmanageable. We found that that's about the size that our staff can follow up on these, make sure everything's going smoothly. Once it gets any larger than that, they become difficult to manage. We also, as we continue to move through the year, you recall we have 2 rounds of blight reduction program funding, and it is within this shaded area, and I'll zoom in at this point. The red area represents the blight reduction program round 1 funding, and the yellow area represents the round 2 funding. So round 2 has had approximately 6 demolitions to date, 7 perhaps. Round 1 has had 13. None of those are shown on here because as we go along, round 1 has plenty of funding left to accomplish even more demolitions. We have 2 to meet our required amount, but we will also be continuing on with an additional 7 that our nonprofit partner HomeStart will acquire through because they're tax deed properties. The Stevenson County Tax Trustee will be able to deed them to the nonprofit, meeting the program requirements, and we can use remaining funding to demolish those. We propose to do that in the month of July. We will be submitting a list, not only for this round of blight reduction program, but for the round 2. We'll be submitting a list of prioritized deeds for the county tax trustee to transfer. Meaning we're going to ask them, put these at the very front of your list so they can come down faster. As we move along, we have blight reduction program 2. Those are in yellow there. So as you see, we have the same situation. We'll be having a large number of those also do a deed transfer from the Stevenson County Tax Trustee to NICA, our round 2 partner. In that instance, NICA is handling the demolitions, so we will not need to bid those or bring them to you for award. We will simply work with them to keep these moving. As we go along, we anticipate again in the fall going to another round of general fund demolitions. Again, broken into a smaller group for a more manageable size. These were all independently have independently come about through the fast track process as they've been noticed, posted up, and legally cleared for demolition. We're thinking that in July we will be able to advertise these for bid and award as well. Those are the green ones here. As we continue on throughout the year, this is where it will get a little bit more. I hate to use the word fuzzy, but I'm trying to think of a better one. We expect to have more funds left in blight reduction program round 2. However, as you see here when I turn this on, we're going to have more houses likely than funds for that particular program. So what ideally happens, we'll get as many of these as we can in what we'd call, the bonus round, I guess. But it would sure be nice for another grant to come along at that time or some other way to handle some of these. Similarly, we would project to probably bid out another group of 6 or 7 here as we enter the early fall. Turn those off and on again so you can see. Some of those will be off of East Stevenson and in that area as well. And as we continue on, this is where we would reach our final batch, which we would need to figure out how we want to fund at that point. The ones we call other. So as you see, there are plenty of other targets that could be done. What we will attempt to do is see how much budget we have left at that point, see how many of those can be taken care of as well as we are in the fall and we enter into winter. So talking funding-wise, the owner demolitions won't cost us anything. The abandoned property program ones won't cost us anything. The blight reduction program demolitions won't cost us anything. The general funded ones certainly will. We've projected, just as a baseline, $7,500 for each demolition. That may be low for large houses, that may be high for small houses. But in using those numbers, before we turned on the other button, and you saw a lot more pop on that map, before that happened, we would be in the high $100,000 range, closer to the $200,000 mark. So certainly with some breaks, some competitive bid pricing, we could get more accomplished. If not, I think, as you can see on this map, we're going to put a really, really large dent in the blight problem as far as vacant and abandoned houses goes. I can certainly take any questions anyone has at this time. That's what I got.
Nice job, Director Mills.
I should say to our department, everyone in the department has helped with this. We deal with these on a daily basis as people come in, so this isn't just the work of one person or anything. This is a team effort to get to this point and where we're ready to pull the trigger on a lot of these.
Any questions to Director Mills?
Mayor?
Alderman Busker.
Yeah, earlier this evening, you talked about if we got real aggressive, you could get up to 80 demolitions a year. Do you have a number of how many houses or buildings would fit the criteria for demolition in Freeport at this time? Not anything that's just overall. Do you have a number? How many buildings are that far gone?
It would probably reach at least 200, and at that point, we would need to start taking a very close look at each one. Kind of beyond that point, because what we're doing here is putting the worst of the worst out of business, take them off the map. There will be another wave come next year with the properties where people haven't paid the taxes, and so they would normally go to the tax sale. However, what we've done this year is we've specifically requested that the tax trustee not sell any of these. If they're not worth enough for people to pay the taxes on, then we don't feel that they're going to be good enough housing stock, and we're simply going to take them down. So there'll be another batch of those next summer. We can look at what they project as people don't pay, but we hope that's starting to be the light at the end of the tunnel. We'll go from there. Thank you.
Anything further for Director Mills?
Mayor?
Alderman Chisholm.
Thank you. Director, you're doing a great job on the demolitions. I think that your leadership and efforts in this area are well recognized and certainly appreciated by the people of Freeport. So keep up the good work. Appreciate the thoroughness on this. I know it's not easy and there's a lot of moving parts and it's a walking target all the time. So if we can get to 80 this year, I think that's a huge success, which would be 3 times as many demolitions as we've done in the past year over year.
Okay. Director Bernadette, do you have anything?
No, Mayor, but however, I just want to remind council this Thursday, we're gonna have the auditors in the house for the whole day doing pre-audit work.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Mills or Director Bernadette? Director Dole, do you have anything besides what you had written in your report?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Director Dole?
Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
I just have one for Director Gold. Did we get a chance to get that hot mix down in that one area we've been speaking about?
Which one?
Arcade.
We've only hot mixed in for 2 weeks now. We're just getting rolling. So there's a lot of work ahead of us.
Right.
I will tell you
But
that.
you know what I'm speaking.
I do know what you're speaking of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further for Director Dole? If not, City Engineer, Water, Sewer, anything to add onto your reports?
Nothing further.
Any questions? Please.
I submitted my report to Mr. Crow, but I just wanted to mention about the Explorer Group on Saturday. We're very proud of our Explorer Group, age 14 to 18. Competed in Rockford for the first time this year and placed 4th place, so we're very proud of them. Just real quick, this weekend we were very busy on patrol. School is out now and the heat is on, so it's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. Any questions for police? Seeing none, fire.
Nothing additional to report. I believe Chief Miller submitted his report prior to his departure.
Yep. Any questions? And library, did you want to add to your report?
Yes, please.
Good evening. In my report, I asked if I might announce the opening of our summer reading program. The kickoff is Saturday, June 10th. It's a program for adults and children All of the summer reading incentives are provided by the Freeport Public Library Foundation. That said, it's still a very labor-intensive program, and I made a case in my report for the importance of library summer reading programs to prevent the summer reading slide, the gap that occurs when children don't have access to reading materials. In addition to sign up on Saturday, June 10th, there's a family program, a magic show at 2 p.m. A magician who is also a balloon artist is going to incorporate some origami in the program. So it sounds like a mix, the likes of which I've never seen in a children's program, and I'm hoping for a good turnout. I'd also like to report on the progress of the program throughout the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for library? Thank you. Okay, on to 21. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention in case the viewing audience didn't get the paper. You might see some activity happening over in Tutty's Crossing. The transformer, one of the transformers over there is being replaced, and it is to no cost to the city. It will take approximately 30 days, so there's a little disruption in the very front of that path, but it doesn't cause anything where it's, the bike path is being stopped. So, second thing is there's a closure going to start on June 12th and on Galena from Mesa to Greenfield, and that will last approximately 30 days. So there'll be a detour there just to inform people that they'll need to make other arrangements, give themselves a little bit more time if they're traveling in that direction. And then lastly, I just wanted to report the excitement of the Public Safety Task Force. We met for the first time a couple of Saturdays ago on Memorial Day weekend and had a great turnout, which just proves to me that it's not just that it's this administration, this council, and this police department that is concerned about the public safety, but we also had those represented from the state attorney's office, the sheriff, housing, township, and the clergy. So it is obvious that it is top priority to everyone in this community. So I just want to say thank you to all of those that came to that task force meeting. So that's all I have to add for a report. And we will move on to number 22 with council announcements and start with Alderman Clem.
The only thing I have this evening, Madam Mayor, is I'd like to thank my wife for 47 years of marriage as of tomorrow.
Congratulations.
She put up with me that long. Thank you much.
Alderman McClanahan.
I don't have anything that can compete with that, so no comment.
Alderman Ross.
Nothing at this time.
Alderman Smith.
Nothing.
Thank you. Alderman Busker.
Nothing this evening.
Alderman Brashaw.
The only thing I'd like to mention to our constituents is I'd like to see more people out there picking up trash. I've been down several side streets and I see stuff blowing up and down, and I want people to be Freeport proud, and I'd like them to start cleaning up not only their yards, but help clean up their blocks. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Keister.
Thank you, Mayor. And Alderperson Bradshaw, I agree with you on that. I get a lot in my neighborhood too, and it'd be nice if they started picking that up. I have several things real quickly. First of all, I want to thank the council for their support on the fireworks. We will be doubling and tripling our efforts, and we will make our target. This Saturday out at Alberta's Airport, I think it's from 9 o'clock until 1. Don't hold me on that time, but I think it's pretty close. We're having the Young Eagles flight this Saturday. What that is young people, I believe it's from the age of 9 to 17, can go out of the airport with their parents, get a free ride on the airplane, they get a little certificate, they got a ride and stuff, and a few other good paperwork for them. And this is free. This is at no cost to the child. So please feel free to come out. If you want more information on it, feel free to give me a call, and I'll give you whatever information I can. Second of all, a reminder that next Monday, Logan's will be putting on a fundraiser for the Sky Concert. She is giving a portion of her revenue for that day to the Sky Concert. Plus from, I believe it's 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, there will be celebrity waiters and wait staff out there. They will be turning all their tips in and stuff as donation to that. Unfortunately, Uncle Sam won't be there tonight because I'm gonna need to be here for the committee of the whole. But I'm sure that's gonna go real well. And also a reminder on the 17th of the pancake breakfast at Applebee's, $5 a piece. And yes, I will have tickets for all the council members to purchase next Monday. That's all I have here, thank you.
Alderman Chesney.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes council announcements. Number 23 is public announcements. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Seeing none. Number 24, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, second by Alderman Ross. All those in favor for adjournment?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Alex.